Hi, Zizaran here, and this is another Diablo 4 video. Today we're going to talk about the recent Season 2 of Diablo 4, where they introduced a lot of improvements to Diablo, and they showed what they can do regarding seasonal content and what you can expect from them going forward. And this was something they advertised as a meaty season with a lot in it. But is it enough? What makes a season worth coming back for? We're seeing a huge surge in seasonal content. Other games like Tarkov, RuneScape, etc., Path of Exile, a lot of games now have seasons, and that makes a game easier to be hyped up, talked about, and marketed to the masses. So what makes a game worth coming back to for somebody like me that really wants to grind my heart out on one game at a time? Well, let's talk about it. So first of all, let's look at what we got in the Season of Blood. In Season 2, Blizzard added a secondary power system in the form of vampiric powers that add onto your character and that you can build around. So this is a fairly accessible system that comes online pretty quickly. It doesn't take a long time to unlock even all the powers, and maxing them is also something you will do in the first 2 or 3 days. And it was interesting because at launch, powers could go past level 3, but this was quickly changed as one of my viewers had level 5 Hemomancy, he relogged and suddenly was kept to level 3. Does that mean that initially it was intended for something that would take you longer to scale, but they realized they were too powerful? I don't know, but it was interesting that it initially had no cap, or at least went past level 5. But the system itself is very cool. There's actually quite a lot of powers, and we're seeing a lot of choice here. This is the best thing you can do in an ARPG, as you don't want to sit there thinking, well, of course I'm going to do this. This is the only thing I would do. There's no other reason to do anything else. And while Hemomancy is maybe a little bit too strong compared to the other things, it is actually not used in every build, and unless you are scaling it in some form, it does start to fall off, and there are some really strong things there. There's also a limit of 20 of the skulls, etc. that you can use, so you can't actually get all the most powerful ones either. So I think it's really well designed, and I really like it, but I also do wish that it was something that either took a little longer or was a little more of an endgame thing. Maybe some more powers that you only unlock later, like after killing Lord Zizaran and stuff. I think there's only 3 or 4 powers that you unlock over time, and everything else can be unlocked instantly. But either way, a really cool system, and I quite like what they've done with it. Now, Season of Blood also brings some new content. It basically gives us green Helltides. They are very, very similar to the Helltides, but they are green, and they have very good density, and they have a lot of Whisper Tree goals, and they're always there as opposed to Helltides. Arguably, Helltides should also always be there. Are you looking for a new PC with Path of Exile 2 and other ARPGs on the horizon? If you're looking for a new PC, the Horizon line offers a great PC for the everyday gamer. Then you have the Voyager line for content creators and people really looking for a top-of-the-line PC. But while the logo might give you a hard time, the PCs will not. If you're looking for pre-built PCs, I'm using one myself. They've been really great so far. Can't go wrong with this one. Give yourself an edge for the upcoming year of game releases by heading over to starforgesystems.com and grab one of the best PCs in the universe. We also have new bosses that are similar to some of the bosses in Path of Exile that require farming for fragments to be able to fight a boss. Where in Path of Exile you have the Shaper, in Diablo 4 you have Duriel. So to kill Duriel, you need to kill the Galvanic boss. It's like a lightning dude. And you need to kill the Whisper Tree boss. And once you've killed 2 of each of those, so you're getting 4 fragments, then you're able to fight Duriel, and Duriel can drop the Uber gear. And this is really good. This is what we want more of in Diablo 4. Having things like this to do, and the fact that they're tradable is really great, because maybe somebody hasn't made a boss killing build. Maybe they're able to kill the 2 small bosses, but they're not able to take on Duriel, and they can sell these to other players. However, there's so limited trading in Diablo 4 that while this is a really cool feature, I do still wish that there was more of an economy, as that was something I really loved in Diablo 2. While I'm not saying the game should be like Diablo 2, that was definitely a great feature. Now, we also saw a large amount of quality of life added in Season 2, such as stash tab searching. This has been invaluable, and the additional filter options there have been great. Overall storage, like gems, are now dropped less frequently. You don't have to have a bunch of rubies, etc., clogging up your inventory. You'll just have the dust, and there's frankly no reason to have any gems sitting in your stash at all. So this has been really good. Mount speed and mount control responsiveness, it's been really great, and you really notice the speed increase, and less dungeon backtracking. While there are still some dungeons that have been a little bit frustrating, it is a lot better now. And there are still some dungeons that are very confusing. There was one where I was like, where on earth am I going next? And I actually had to backtrack into a portal and continue from there. But generally, it has been better. Still think it could be improved a little bit, and there's still a lot of dungeons that have really weird and long objectives. So there will be some dungeons that just feel incredibly punishing. This is where I really like that specific zones would have specific drops, etc. And another huge change that happened in the Season of Blood is Diablo reworked how gear works in types of vulnerability and crit. You no longer have an infinite multiplier between vulnerable and crit, giving that the only option for gear. And they've now added resistances as an actual thing that you need to gear for. Initially, I thought this was going to be a bit of a joke because first off, there's not that many slots on gear. How are you going to actually have resistances fit in and be meaningful? And are you going to have a resistance loss between world tiers like Path of Exile and Diablo 2, etc.? Well, turns out yes, you are. And it is still pretty meaningful. Whenever they said that they were going to get a lot of all resist from your amulet, I thought, is that because it's a joke and you're going to res cap from your amulet and maybe some gems? Well, no, you actually do need to get pretty decent gear, and I personally find that it does add more interesting stuff to gear. Now, as far as the offensive stats and stuff, my main problem of gearing in Diablo 4 is that the stats simply aren't that interesting. I don't care that much now. Is it crit damage? Is it vulnerable damage? Is it healthy enemies? Is it injured enemies? Is it close enemies? Is it distant? Well, they're kind of all the same now. So it's just what is the easiest for me to proc? What is the second easiest for me to proc? And I really wish we had a few more interesting stats. For example, projectile builds could have things like additional projectiles, or projectiles have a chance to ricochet off a wall, bounce back, circle around you. Like, more stats like that are some of my favorite things, and I definitely want to see more of that on especially unique items. I don't know if this is just my feeling, but at least the offensive stats in Diablo 4 right now, it's a little bit like we're back to offense and defense. So at least defense are in a pretty neat spot right now, and I think resistances was a good addition. The offensive ones are, they could do with a little work, but at least we're heading in the right direction, and I'd love to see where Blizzard's going to take this in the future. So as mentioned earlier, we're seeing a huge rise in the seasonal model with resets and stuff like that, where we're even seeing MMORPGs are actually having like a soft reset with every major patch, making maybe past gear redundant, etc., which is very, very similar to what ARPGs do. So let's compare Season of Blood to what other games do, and not just comparing Path of Exile, as that is a very seasonal game, so we'll look at other RPGs and other games in general. Seasonal games often include a large breadth of different types of content in the free updates, so this is generally not talking about paid expansions, but they're also expanding on the main attraction on the game, which usually includes the continuation of a story that unlocks more endgame or game modes. Like for example, Path of Exile has changes in the Atlas tree to revitalize the endgame. Often games will expand on gearing, crafting, or gathering systems. And note that expanding isn't fixing, but adding onto it. Very often, we see balance changes to classes, gear, etc. And I'm a big believer in that games don't necessarily need to be balanced, just the balance needs to keep changing to keep things interesting. Keep a few things similar scaling so that people have comfortable things to fall back on, but allow people to explore and try out things that did not work in previous patches. New gameplay mechanics, this can be like different maps, different bosses to fight, or just different side mechanics that you've not been able to do before. And there can be new or reworked casual features, things like fishing, housing, hideout decorations, or just guild events. So what do I like in seasonal games? Like, what actually brings me back for resets? Honestly, for me, the reset itself. Quite a lot of games could have very little to no updates as long as the base game is good. So, for example, Tarkov right now and Path of Exile for me, both of these games, I have such a blast with the base game. So if for any reason the game just does a reset, very often that's enough to bring me back. As long as I'm not super burnt out on the game at the time, that's a really cool thing. And that's because the most interesting thing is like the first week, maybe even the first 2 weeks, where you're sort of like getting everything and the economy is really interesting in the games. Things are feeling really like healthy and fresh. Whereas, you know, like endgame Tarkov or endgame Path of Exile, things are getting a little stale. people already have everything, and you're getting less of those progression milestones. Whereas early in a season, you're always working towards something, you're getting that nice sense of progression. Same with like early on feeling in survival games like Ark Survival Evolved or Rust, where you're doing all those like small leaps like, oh my god, we got steel gear, etc. But there are also really cool things added in a game where maybe you'll see something like a new unique item or a new mechanic and you're like, ooh, I wonder if I can do this with it. And that will give you a really cool reason to come back that gets you really excited, especially things like endgame bosses, particularly when they're really hard. And I might think like, ooh, can I be the first person in the world to kill this? While it does take games quite a long time to find their grove and their niche in the universe, I would say Diablo 4 currently doesn't have one. It is right now a pretty good game for casuals, where in Season 2 you are probably going to get between 50 and 100 hours, but it is probably not going to be something that most people are going to get 200 to 500 hours out of. But does it need to be that type of game? Maybe not. That being said, I've been having a blast playing Season 2 right now. I just wish it had a bit more stuff to do at the end game. As soon as I hit like level 80, I was already feeling a little bit done as I'd done all the bosses except Lilith, and Lilith is quite a lot easier now and doesn't drop anything crazy. So Duriel is really cool, however, as Duriel actually drops Uber Uniques. So I want to farm Duriel until I drop an Uber Unique. I think I've got like another 8 sets ready. And if you do it in a group and you all bring 8 sets each, you can farm Duriel for quite a while, and hopefully at least one of you will drop a Uber Unique. I do, however, really wish Diablo 4 had some sort of economy. That is a big miss for me, and I would love to see something like that in the future. Now, I don't 100% know why they don't have one, but a lot of people say that it's because they are worried about real money trading, etc. That's pretty much always going to happen in games, and we already see this with gold in Diablo 4, even though it's incredibly easy to farm. But that being said, I do see myself coming back every season and playing at least for a few days. It's pretty fun to start over, try a new character, and see what they've added. And I really liked what Season of Blood added as a early mechanic. Something that felt really bad for me in Diablo 4 before was that when you're starting a new character in Season 0, there was no difference between a level 1 character and a level 100, pretty much, right? There didn't feel like a big difference. I was pretty much just doing the same thing, just brainlessly running through dungeons or later nightmare dungeons, which really aren't that different from the dungeons you're running in level 5. They just have some extra mods, and you get to level up a glyph at the end. So I would love to see a few more different systems, a few more different, I don't know, like maybe exploring hell, some sort of like mechanic like that. It doesn't have to be crazy, but yeah, a few more things like that as well as bosses, and the game is going to be in a pretty cool state. Either way, I hope you guys are enjoying the Diablo 4 content. Thank you so much for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.